This homeless man was about to receive his last meal from a broke college student. The security camera at Rossi's diner captured everything. A 19-year-old black kid spending his final $12 on a stranger's dinner. The homeless man was eating like he hadn't had food in days. The grateful handshake. The business card exchange. 3 days later, when the truth exploded across every news channel in America, nobody could believe it. The CEO of Morrison Industries, one of Chicago's biggest companies, had been living on the streets. And the broke college student who helped him? His life was about to change in ways that seem impossible. This isn't just a story about kindness. It's about what happens when your last dollar becomes your first step toward everything you've ever dreamed of. Watch what happens next. But to understand why what happened next was so incredible, you need to know just how much Jamal Williams was struggling. Because this wasn't some rich kid playing hero. This was a young man who knew exactly what it felt like to go to bed hungry. Every morning at 5 a.m., Jamal's alarm pierced through the thin walls of his studio apartment. Not because he wanted to be up that early, because he had to be. The cramped space he shared with his 16-year-old sister Keisha was all they could afford. 400 square feet. One bed that Keisha slept in while Jamal took the couch. A kitchenette with a mini-fridge that barely worked. And rent that ate up most of his paycheck every single month. 6 months ago, their grandmother had passed away. The woman who raised them both after their parents died in a car accident when Jamal was 12. She left them the apartment, but also left them completely on their own. At 19, Jamal became Keisha's legal guardian, which meant college dreams. Put on hold. Full-time university? Impossible. His future had to wait because his little sister's present mattered more. So he found a different path. Community college at night, work during the day, sleep when he could. His daily routine was brutal. Study from 5:30 to 6:30 a.m. while Keisha slept. Shower with cold water because the hot water heater was broken and they couldn't afford to fix it. Take 2 buses to his job at Meijer's grocery store, where he'd spend 8 hours stocking shelves, dealing with angry customers, and cleaning up spills in aisle 7. The work was hard, but what made it harder was watching other people his age living the life he should have been living. College students came in buying energy drinks and snacks with their parents' credit cards. They complained about midterms and fraternity parties. They had no idea what it felt like to count every dollar. Every afternoon at 3 p.m., Jamal would clock out and take those same 2 buses to pick up Keisha from Jefferson High School. He'd help her with homework at the kitchen table that wobbled because one leg was shorter than the others. They'd eat whatever was cheapest that week: ramen noodles, peanut butter sandwiches, generic cereal that tasted like cardboard. At 7 p.m., Jamal would kiss his sister on the forehead and head back out into the Chicago cold. 2 more buses to Harold Washington Community College, where he was taking business administration classes. Not because it was his passion, but because it was practical. Because maybe, someday, he could start something that would get them out of this cycle. His professors didn't know his story. His classmates didn't know that he sometimes fell asleep during lectures because he'd been up until 2 a.m. studying after getting home from work. They didn't know that the reason he never joined study groups was because he didn't have money for coffee shops or gas to drive places. But somehow, Jamal kept going. He maintained a 3.7 GPA. He never missed work. He made sure Keisha's grades stayed high and that she had clean clothes for school, even if it meant he wore the same 3 shirts in rotation. The thing about Jamal was this: he never complained, not once. When Mrs. Rodriguez at the grocery store was rude to him, he smiled and said, "Have a blessed day." When classmates talked about spring break trips he'd never be able to afford, he listened politely and asked questions about their plans. He carried a worn business card in his wallet from a motivational speaker who had visited his high school 2 years ago. The man had talked about paying it forward and how small acts of kindness could change the world. Jamal had kept that card through everything, through his grandmother's funeral, through taking custody of Keisha, through sleepless nights wondering how he'd pay next month's rent. Because deep down, even when everything felt impossible, Jamal believed that good things happened to good people. His grandmother had taught him that. Feed people when you can, baby, she used to say. The universe keeps track of everything. But the universe seemed to be keeping a different kind of scorecard lately. That December night, walking to Rossi's diner after his shift, Jamal had exactly $12 in his wallet. Not $12 in spending money. $12 total. Period. It was supposed to last him until Friday when he got paid. 3 more days. Which meant no lunch tomorrow. No bus fare if he absolutely had to get somewhere. No emergency money if Keisha needed something for school. He'd planned to buy a cup of coffee at Rossi's and sit inside where it was warm until his evening class started. The diner was known in their neighborhood for letting people stay as long as they needed, even if they only ordered something small. Maria, one of the waitresses, had always been kind to him. As he pushed through the diner's heavy glass door, the warmth hit his face like a blessing. The smell of coffee and fried food made his stomach growl. He hadn't eaten since breakfast. 2 pieces of toast with generic peanut butter. But what he saw in the corner booth made his empty stomach and tired feet feel irrelevant. There was something about the man sitting alone that Jamal couldn't ignore. And in just a few minutes, that something would change everything. That December night, something was different about the usual crowd at Rossi's diner. And what Jamal was about to witness would test every lesson his grandmother had ever taught him. The temperature outside had dropped to 15 degrees. With the wind chill, it felt like death. The kind of cold that cut through your clothes and made your bones ache. Chicago winters were brutal, but this was the kind of night that killed people. Jamal found a small table near the window and ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a cup of coffee for $2. As he wrapped his frozen fingers around the warm mug, his eyes wandered to the corner booth where an elderly white man sat completely alone. The man was maybe 65, with silver hair and clothes that had seen better days. But here's what caught Jamal's attention. His clothes were worn, but they were clean, layered carefully. A wool coat that was frayed at the edges but had once been expensive. Underneath, a sweater with a small hole near the collar, but the kind of quality that lasted decades. And there was something else. Something that didn't quite fit. On his left wrist, barely visible under his frayed sleeve, was a watch. Not just any watch. Even from across the diner, Jamal could tell it was expensive. The kind that caught the light when the man moved his hand. The kind that cost more than Jamal made in 6 months. The man had been sitting there for at least 20 minutes, studying the menu like it contained the secrets of the universe. But he wasn't just reading it. He was staring at the prices. His lips moved slightly as he calculated something in his head. Maria, the waitress Jamal knew, had approached the man twice. Each time he'd waved her away politely with phrases like, "Just a few more minutes if you don't mind," and "I appreciate your patience, miss." His voice was soft but educated, the kind of voice that belonged in boardrooms, not homeless shelters. That's when Jamal realized what was happening. The man was hungry, really, truly hungry. But he was also broke. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. The weather report that morning had warned everyone to stay indoors. Shelters across the city were already full. This wasn't the kind of night anyone should be wandering the streets. But it was getting worse inside the diner, too. More people kept coming in, shaking off snow and stamping their feet. People who had somewhere warm to go eventually. The manager, Mr. Rossi, kept glancing toward the corner booth. He wasn't mean, but he ran a business. Tables were for paying customers. The man in the corner seemed to understand. He reached into his coat pockets and searched them carefully. Then his pants pockets. Then his coat pockets again. Each search became more desperate. His shoulders sagged a little more each time his hands came up empty. That's when he started coughing. It wasn't just a little cough. It was deep, coming from his chest. The kind that made other people in the diner look over with concern. The kind that said this person was getting sick, and being cold and hungry wasn't helping. Jamal watched as the man tried to muffle the coughing with his sleeve, tried to make himself smaller in the booth, tried to disappear. Maria noticed too. She walked over with a glass of water and set it down gently. "On the house," she whispered. The man looked up at her with gratitude that seemed way too big for such a small gesture. "Thank you, miss. You're very kind." Even his thank you sounded different, formal, like he was used to saying please and thank you to people who worked for him, not the other way around. Jamal found himself doing the math without meaning to. His $12 could buy the man a meal. The meatloaf special was $8, with coffee and tax maybe $12.50. But that would leave him with nothing, actually less than nothing. 3 days until payday, no lunch tomorrow, no bus money if Keisha needed something, no emergency fund if something went wrong. His grandmother's voice echoed in his head. "Feed people when you can, baby." But could he? Really? The man started to stand up, clearly preparing to leave. But as he rose from the booth, he swayed slightly, caught himself on the table, made a quiet sound that was part exhaustion, part defeat. The diner suddenly felt too warm. Jamal could feel sweat on his forehead despite having been freezing just minutes before. His heart was pounding like he'd been running. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about life and death. The man was sick, broke, and about to walk out into a Chicago winter that could kill him. Every reasonable part of Jamal's brain screamed at him to stay seated, to mind his own business, to think about Keisha and their own survival. But his feet were already moving, and what he was about to do would change both of their lives forever. What happened next would be caught on the diner's security camera, and 3 days later, that footage would go viral across every social media platform in America. Jamal's legs felt like they belonged to someone else as he walked across the diner floor. Each step seemed to echo louder than it should. The man was still standing, one hand gripping the edge of the table for support, clearly preparing to leave. "Excuse me, sir?" The man turned. Up close, his eyes were the brightest blue Jamal had ever seen. Intelligent, alert, but tired in a way that went deeper than just needing sleep. "Yes, son?" Even that simple response confirmed what Jamal had noticed from across the room. This man spoke like someone used to being in charge, like someone who had given presentations to boardrooms full of important people. "I wondered if you'd like to join me for dinner." The man blinked. For a moment, he seemed completely caught off guard, like this was the last thing he'd expected anyone to say. "Oh, son, I couldn't impose." "You're not imposing. I'm inviting you. Please." The word please seemed to hit the man differently. His expression softened. He studied Jamal's face for a long moment, as if trying to solve a puzzle. "That's very kind of you, but I'm afraid I can't." "Sir." Jamal's voice was gentle but firm. "It's December in Chicago. It's 15 degrees outside, and you're coughing like you might be getting sick." The man's hand went unconsciously to his chest. "I insist," Jamal continued. "Please, let me buy you dinner." Another long pause. The man's eyes searched Jamal's face again. Whatever he saw there seemed to convince him. "All right. Thank you. That's extraordinarily kind." They sat across from each other in Jamal's small table by the window. Maria came over immediately, her face brightening when she saw the two of them together. "What can I get you gentlemen tonight?" Jamal didn't even look at the menu. He couldn't afford to look at prices and change his mind. "2 meatloaf specials, please, with coffee. And could you bring us some of that apple pie when we're done?" "Of course, honey." As Maria walked away, the man looked directly at Jamal. "Son, that's going to cost..." "Don't worry about it. But I should tell you, I can't pay you back right now. I'm not asking you to." The man fell silent. He folded his hands on the table and just stared, not in a rude way, more like he was seeing something he hadn't expected to exist. "What's your name?" Jamal asked. William Morrison." He said it with the slightest hesitation, like he was deciding whether to give his real name. "I'm Jamal Williams. Pleased to meet you, Jamal." William extended his hand across the table. His handshake was firm, confident, the handshake of someone used to making deals. "May I ask what you do?" "I work at a grocery store during the day. Go to community college at night. Business administration." "Ah, and what kind of business interests you?" Jamal felt himself relaxing despite the situation. There was something about William that made conversation easy, like talking to a favorite teacher. "I want to open a community center someday, somewhere people can get job training, financial literacy classes, help people get back on their feet." William's eyebrows raised slightly. "That's ambitious and admirable. Right now it's just a dream, but maybe someday. Dreams have a way of becoming reality for people like you." "People like me?" "People who see a stranger in need and don't hesitate to help." The food arrived quickly. Jamal watched as William ate slowly, savoring every bite. His table manners were perfect. He used his napkin properly, cut his meatloaf into precise pieces. This wasn't someone who usually ate at diners. "This is delicious," William said. "I can't remember the last time I had a home-cooked meal like this." "How long have you been—" Jamal wasn't sure how to finish the question politely. "Between situations," William supplied. "A few weeks now." "Do you have a family? Someone who could help?" William's face darkened slightly. "I lost my wife 3 months ago. After that, everything just fell apart." "I'm sorry for your loss." "Thank you. She was the best person I ever knew, always helping others. She would have loved meeting you." They ate in comfortable silence for a while. Jamal noticed that William's phone buzzed twice during dinner. Each time, William glanced at it but didn't answer. The second time, he did pick it up briefly. William speaking. His voice changed completely, became authoritative, almost commanding. "Not now. I'll call you back." He hung up quickly and turned his attention back to Jamal, but not before Jamal noticed something interesting. The way William had answered that phone call sounded like a man used to being in charge of important things. "Sorry about that," William said, his voice back to the gentle tone he'd been using all evening. "No problem. Work calls?" Something like that. William asked thoughtful questions about Jamal's life, about his sister, about his grandmother who had raised them, about his dreams for the future. He listened intently to every answer, occasionally taking notes in a small leather notebook. "You mentioned your grandmother raised you and your sister?" "Yeah. Our parents died when I was 12. Grandma took us in. She passed away 6 months ago." "So you're taking care of your sister now?" "She's 16. I'm her legal guardian." William stopped eating. "You're 19 years old, working full-time, going to school and raising a teenage sister? It's what needs to be done." "That's remarkable, Jamal. Most people your age can barely take care of themselves. I had a good teacher. My grandma always said, 'Take care of your family first, but don't forget to take care of strangers too.'" William smiled for the first time all evening. "She sounds like a wise woman." She was. She used to say the universe keeps track of everything. Good deeds, bad deeds. It all comes back eventually. I believe that too. As they finished their pie, Jamal noticed something else odd. Outside in the parking lot, a black SUV with tinted windows had been idling for the past 20 minutes. William had glanced at it several times during dinner, always quickly looking away. When Maria brought the check, William reached instinctively for his wallet, then stopped himself. Son, I need to be honest with you. I can't repay you right now. I told you I don't want repayment. The total was $24.50, with tip, $27. Jamal handed Maria $30 from his $12 stash money he definitely didn't have. But somehow it felt like the most important money he'd ever spent. When William tried to repay Jamal, what happened next would prove something incredible about both men. Something that would make the CEO of Morrison Industries question everything he thought he knew about human nature. As Maria walked away with the payment, William sat in stunned silence. He stared at the receipt on the table like it contained some kind of impossible equation. "Son," he said slowly, "do you realize what you just did? I bought us dinner. You paid $30 when you only had 12. Jamal's stomach dropped. Of course William had been watching. Of course he'd noticed. "It's fine," Jamal said quickly. "Really? It's not fine." William's voice was gentle but firm. "You just spent money you don't have on a complete stranger." They both knew it was true. Jamal had borrowed $18 from his future self. $18 he'd have to figure out somehow over the next 3 days. William reached into his coat and pulled out his wallet. It was leather, well-worn but expensive, the kind that had held a lot of money over the years. He opened it and looked inside. Then he closed it and put it back in his coat. "I can't repay you right now," he said, "but I have this." He started to remove the watch from his wrist. Up close, Jamal could see it clearly now. It was definitely a Rolex. The real thing. Even someone who knew nothing about watches could tell it was worth more than most people made in a year. "Please," William said, extending the watch toward Jamal. "Take this as collateral. When I get back on my feet, I'll buy it back from you." "No." Jamal pushed the watch gently back toward William. "I don't want collateral. But this watch is worth—" "I don't care what it's worth." William froze. "You don't care?" "Sir, your life is worth more than any watch. Keep it. You might need to sell it yourself." For a moment, William just stared. Then something shifted in his expression. His eyes became brighter, more focused, like he was really seeing Jamal for the first time. "In 40 years, William said slowly, "I have never met anyone like you. You don't even know me. I know enough." William reached into his leather notebook and carefully tore out a page. No, not a page. A business card that had been tucked inside. Character reveals itself in moments like these. The card was simple but expensive. Heavy cardstock with clean, minimal design. It read, "William R. Morrison," with a phone number underneath. No company name, no title, no address. "What kind of business are you in, Mr. Morrison?" William hesitated for just a fraction of a second. "I help connect people with opportunities." "What kind of opportunities?" "The kind that changes lives." Jamal studied the card. Something about the name seemed familiar, but he couldn't place it. "If you ever need anything," William continued, "call that number. Ask for me specifically." "Why would you do that for someone you just met?" "Because tonight, you did something for me that I'll never forget. You didn't see a homeless man. You didn't see someone to pity or avoid. You saw a human being who needed help." Outside, the black SUV's engine started. William glanced toward the window, then back at Jamal. "I should go," he said, standing up. "My ride is here." They walked toward the door together. Through the glass, Jamal could see a professional-looking man in a dark suit getting out of the SUV. The man moved with purpose, like someone used to being in charge of important things. "Sir," the driver said as William approached the vehicle. It wasn't "Hey" or "Buddy" or even "Mr. Morrison." It was "Sir," with the kind of respect reserved for someone very important. William paused at the car door and turned back to Jamal. "Remember what I said about dreams, son. They have a way of becoming reality for people like you. People like me. People who choose kindness when it costs them everything." The SUV pulled away into the snowy Chicago night, leaving Jamal standing alone under the diner's neon sign. In his hand, he held a business card that felt heavier than it should. In his wallet, he had exactly $0.00. But somehow, for the first time in months, he felt rich. Over the next 2 days, strange things started happening that would make Jamal question everything about that night. Because what he'd witnessed wasn't just kindness being rewarded, it was something much bigger than that. Day 1 came with brutal consequences. Jamal woke up Tuesday morning with his stomach cramping from hunger. No money for breakfast, no money for lunch. When his supervisor at Myers Grocery asked why he seemed distracted, Jamal just said he was tired. But the business card in his wallet felt like it was burning a hole through the leather. During his 15-minute break, Jamal pulled out his phone and Googled William R. Morrison, Chicago. Thousands of results popped up. Too many to sort through. Way too common a name. He tried William R. Morrison, Business, Chicago. The phone's loading wheel spun and spun. Just as the results started to appear, his battery died. Day 2 brought different problems. Keisha noticed they were eating ramen noodles for the 3rd meal in a row. "Jamal, are we okay?" she asked, stirring the cheap noodles around her bowl. "Like, financially okay?" "We're fine, baby girl. Just saving money this week." But Keisha was 16, not 6. She could do math. She could see that her brother was eating less, sleeping less, worrying more. That night at Harold Washington Community College, Professor Martinez was discussing local business case studies. He clicked through PowerPoint slides showing various Chicago companies. "One of our city's most influential corporations is Morrison Industries," he said. Founded in 1987 by William Morrison, it's grown into a multi-billion-dollar conglomerate focused on real estate development and community investment. Jamal's head snapped up from his notebook. The company employs over 3,000 people locally and has invested over $50 million in community development projects across the South Side. Professor Martinez clicked to the next slide. A professional headshot appeared on the projector screen. Jamal's stomach dropped. It was him. Older, wearing a $3,000 suit instead of tattered clothes. Hair perfectly styled instead of disheveled. But those same intelligent blue eyes. The same formal posture, the same way of holding his hands. "Morrison Industries CEO William Morrison," the professor continued, "is known for his philanthropic work and hands-on approach to community engagement. Interesting man. Very private, but incredibly generous." Jamal stared at the screen until his eyes burned. The class continued around him, but all he could hear was his own heartbeat. When class ended, he approached Professor Martinez's desk. "Excuse me, Professor. That CEO you mentioned, William Morrison, is he still actively running the company?" "Oh yes, very much so. Why do you ask? What does he look like in person?" Professor Martinez pulled up the Morrison Industries website on his laptop. There were several recent photos, board meetings, charity events, ribbon cuttings. Every single picture showed the same man who had sat across from Jamal 2 nights ago, eating meatloaf and claiming he couldn't afford dinner. But the truth about that night was far more incredible than Jamal ever imagined. And when he finally got the courage to make that phone call, what William told him would change everything he thought he knew about kindness, grief, and what it really means to be human. Jamal stared at his phone for 20 minutes before dialing the number on the business card. His hands were shaking. Not from cold this time, but from the 1,000 questions racing through his mind. Was this some kind of joke? A test? Had he been set up somehow? Finally, he pressed the call. The phone rang twice before a professional female voice answered. Morrison Industries, Mr. Morrison's office. This is Janet speaking. Jamal's mouth went dry. Morrison Industries. It was real. Hi. I'd like to speak with William Morrison, please. May I ask who's calling? Jamal Williams. He gave me this number and said to ask for him specifically. There was a pause. A long pause. Long enough that Jamal wondered if the call had dropped. Please hold, Mr. Williams. Classical music filled his ear. Jamal's heart pounded as he waited. This was really happening. He was really calling the CEO of a billion-dollar company. A man who had been sitting in a diner booth, pretending to be homeless, eating dinner with his last $12. Jamal. William's voice was warm, familiar, but different somehow, more confident, more in charge. Mr. Morrison, I found out who you are. I suspected you might. Why didn't you tell me? There was another pause, but this one felt different, thoughtful rather than awkward. Can I ask you something, son? If I had introduced myself as the CEO of Morrison Industries that night, would you still have helped me? Of course I would have. But would you have helped me the same way? Jamal thought about it. I really thought about it. I don't know. Maybe not. You might have helped out of pity instead of respect. You might have seen a rich man who lost his way instead of a human being who needed kindness. But you lied to me. I never lied, Jamal. I just didn't tell you everything. What's everything? William took a deep breath. Even through the phone, Jamal could hear the weight of what was coming. The truth is, I was homeless that night, not because I had to be, but because I chose to be. I don't understand. 3 months ago, I lost my wife, Sarah. We were married for 35 years. She was my best friend, my business partner, my everything. When she died, I fell apart. Jamal sat down heavily on his couch. This wasn't what he'd expected. I couldn't function, William continued. Couldn't make decisions. Couldn't face the office or the board meetings or the charity galas. Everything reminded me of her. So I took a leave of absence from the company. But why were you on the streets? Because I needed to remember what it felt like to be human again. Sarah always said I'd gotten too comfortable in my ivory tower, too disconnected from the people our company was supposed to serve. William's voice cracked slightly. She ran our charitable foundation, you know. Spent every day working with families who were struggling, people who were one paycheck away from disaster. She'd come home and tell me stories about real courage, real sacrifice, and I'd nod and write checks and think I understood. But you didn't? I understood numbers. I understood tax write-offs and public relations benefits, but I didn't understand what it actually felt like to be hungry, to be cold, to have strangers look through you like you don't exist. Jamal found himself leaning forward, completely absorbed. So I decided to find out. I gave my assistant some excuse about needing time to think. I left my credit cards and identification at home, took $100 cash and went to see how long I could survive. How long have you been out there? That was my 4th night. I'd spent the first 3 sleeping in shelters, eating at soup kitchens, learning what it really meant to depend on the kindness of strangers. And you were actually hungry that night? Starving. I'd spent my last $7 the night before. I hadn't eaten in 18 hours. That wasn't an act, son. That was real. Jamal's mind raced. But the watch! I kept the Rolex because it was the last gift Sarah ever gave me. I couldn't bring myself to sell it even when I was truly desperate. So when I offered to buy you dinner, you saved my life. But more than that, you reminded me who I used to be, who Sarah fell in love with all those years ago. William paused again. You see, Jamal, you didn't help me because you felt sorry for me. You helped me because you saw someone who needed help. You didn't lecture me about making better choices or getting my life together. You just saw a human being and responded with humanity. Anyone would have done the same thing. No, son. Oh, they wouldn't have. I sat in that diner for 4 hours over those 4 nights. Dozens of people saw me. You were the only one who did anything. Jamal felt tears stinging his eyes. Your wife would have been proud of you that night, he said quietly. She would have. That's exactly what she would have done. And that's why I have to ask you something important. What? I want to offer you a job, Jamal. A real job. With my company. Jamal's phone nearly slipped from his hand. But I'm just a... You're exactly what we need. What I need. Someone who understands what real kindness looks like. Someone who knows what it's like to sacrifice for others. Mr. Morrison, I don't have experience running big programs or... Experience can be taught, Jamal. Characters cannot. And you have more character in your 19-year-old heart than most executives develop in their entire careers. What kind of job? I want you to help me rebuild our foundation. Help me remember what Sarah was trying to teach me. Help me turn Morrison Industries into the kind of company that actually changes lives instead of just writing checks. Jamal sat in stunned silence. Are you serious? Dead serious. The question is, are you interested? What William offered next would solve every problem Jamal had ever faced. But it came with one condition that would test everything he believed about staying true to himself. Interested doesn't even begin to cover it, Jamal said, his voice barely above a whisper. But Mr. Morrison, I need to be honest with you. I don't know anything about running a foundation. You know the most important thing, which is, you know what it feels like to choose kindness when it costs you everything. William's voice took on the tone of someone used to making life-changing offers. Here's what I'm proposing. Community Program Director for the Morrison Foundation. Your job would be designing programs for underserved communities. Real programs, created by someone who understands real need. Jamal's hand gripped the phone tighter. Starting salary, $75,000 per year, plus full benefits. Health insurance, dental, vision, company car, housing allowance, $75,000. Jamal made $12,000 last year. This wasn't just a better job. This was a different universe. The foundation would provide a full scholarship for your bachelor's degree. Evening classes at Northwestern University, all expenses paid. Northwestern. Jamal had dreamed of Northwestern since he was 15. And for Keisha? Full scholarship to Francis Parker School, best private high school in Chicago, college prep program. She'd graduate ready for any university in the country. Jamal felt dizzy. This wasn't real. William, this is incredible, but why me? You could hire someone with 10 years of experience. Experience can be learned. What you have can't be taught. What do I have? You understand what it's like to make an impossible choice and choose kindness anyway. Most nonprofit managers have never spent their last $12 on a stranger. William paused. My wife Sarah started as a social worker making $18,000 a year. She built our foundation because she never forgot what it felt like to struggle. I need someone with that authenticity. What would I actually be doing? Travel to communities, assess real needs, not what we think they need from our boardroom, but what people actually need. Design programs with community input. You'd trust me to lead that? You'll have a team, training, and mentorship from me personally, but yes, I'd trust you to lead. No more double shifts. No more choosing between textbooks and groceries. No more watching Keisha eat ramen because he'd spent their food money on kindness. But then came the fear. What if I mess it up? You're smart enough to sacrifice for your sister. You're smart enough to help a stranger when you have nothing. Intelligence isn't just test scores, son. There's one condition, William said. Non-negotiable. Jamal's stomach tightened. The catch. What's that? You must never lose sight of what made you help me that night. I don't understand. Power changes people, Jamal. Money changes people. I've seen good people get comfortable and forget what it's like to struggle. They start making decisions from their heads instead of their hearts. William's voice became serious. I need someone who will always remember what it feels like to have $12 and choose to spend it on someone else. Promise me you'll never forget that feeling. I promise. Because the moment you start seeing people as statistics instead of human beings, you'll lose everything that makes you special. When would I start? Finish your current semester. Start in January. That gives us time to set up your transition. Transition? New apartment for you and Keisha, closer to Northwestern and Parker School. Moving expenses covered. 6 months living expenses up front so you can focus on learning instead of worrying about money. This was really happening. William, I need to ask something. Anything. That night at the diner, was any of it real? The hunger, the desperation? William was quiet for a long moment. The hunger was real, Jamal. The desperation was real. I was genuinely broken and needed help. What wasn't real was the idea that I had no other options. So it was a test? No. It was a man who had lost his way, being saved by someone who showed him authentic kindness. This job offer isn't a reward for passing a test. It's recognition of who you already are. And if I hadn't helped you, then I would have walked into that Chicago winter and continued learning what it meant to be human. And some other company would eventually get the privilege of hiring Jamal Williams. You really believe I can do this? Son, you're not the risk here. The risk would be letting someone else have this opportunity. Jamal closed his eyes. Thoughts about Keisha, about Northwestern, about never having to choose between kindness and survival again. If you're willing to take a chance on me, Jamal, I'm not taking a chance. I'm making the smartest business decision of my career. 6 months later, the ripple effects of that one dinner were felt across the entire city. But what happened next proved that sometimes changing one life can change thousands. The transformation was almost impossible to believe. Jamal Williams, who 6 months earlier had been counting his last $12 outside a diner, now walked confidently through Morrison Industries wearing a tailored suit. But he still took the CTA Blue Line to work every morning. I want to remember where I came from, he told Chicago Tribune reporters. The moment I start taking a private car is the moment I stop understanding the people we serve. Keisha thrived at Francis Parker School. Honor roll every semester. Debate team captain. Already talking to college recruiters from Stanford and Yale. But every Sunday, she volunteered at the Southside Food Bank. My brother taught me that success means nothing if you don't lift others up, she said during her valedictorian speech. The Morrison Foundation was completely reimagined under Jamal's leadership. Gone were programs designed by committees who had never experienced poverty. In their place were initiatives created with the communities they served. The Last Dollar Fund became their signature program. It provided immediate assistance to people who had spent their final resources helping others. Within 6 months, they documented over 500 such cases across Chicago. Maria Santos, a single mother from Pilsen, spent her last $40 buying groceries for an elderly neighbor. When the Last Dollar Fund heard her story, they paid her rent for 3 months and connected her with healthcare job training. I never thought anyone noticed the small things, Maria said, but Jamal's team sees everything. The street-level assessment program required every foundation employee to spend 1 week annually living in the communities they served, not visiting. Living. You can't design solutions for problems you've never experienced, Jamal explained to Harvard Business School students during a viral YouTube lecture. The results were staggering. Program effectiveness increased 300%. Community satisfaction jumped from 2.1 to 4.7 out of 5. The Foundation's programs were being replicated in 12 other cities. William Morrison himself was transformed. The grief-stricken CEO who had lived on Chicago streets was now energized in ways colleagues hadn't seen since Sarah's death. He instituted Community Fridays, where executives left boardrooms to work directly in Foundation programs. "Jamal saved my company," William told Fortune magazine, "but more than that, he saved my soul." Media attention was overwhelming. Good Morning America, The Tonight Show. A Netflix documentary called The Last Dollar won 3 Emmy nominations. Morrison Industries stock increased 28%. But the most significant change happened at Rossi's Diner. The corner booth where Jamal and William shared their life-changing meal now bore a small plaque. "In memory of Sarah Morrison and in honor of everyday kindness." Every December, the Foundation sponsored a community dinner where 100 people ate for free. The only requirement: each guest shared a story of unexpected kindness. Isabella Rodriguez was one of those guests. 17, working 2 jobs while maintaining a 4.0 GPA to support her disabled mother. She had heard Jamal's story and decided to help her elderly neighbor, Mrs. Lane, who couldn't afford heart medication. Isabella spent her college savings $237 on Mrs. Lane's prescription. When she shared this at the community dinner, she didn't know Mrs. Lane was a retired chemistry professor who would tutor her for free for 6 months. Isabella earned a full Northwestern scholarship. She now studies biochemistry and works part-time at the Morrison Foundation. "The circle keeps growing," Jamal observed during a board meeting. "Every act of kindness creates more kindness." The numbers supported his observation. The hashtag #LastDollarChallenge generated over 50,000 documented acts of kindness. Food banks across Chicago reported 40% increases in volunteers. 3 major corporations launched similar initiatives. But the most meaningful change couldn't be measured in statistics. 1 year later, on the anniversary of that frozen December night, something magical happened at Rossi's Diner that proved kindness truly does come full circle. December 15th, 7:30 p.m. The same booth, the same time. Jamal sat across from William, both wearing casual clothes instead of business suits. Maria, now assistant manager and engaged to Jamal, served them coffee with a smile that could light up the whole diner. "Can you believe it's been a year?" William asked, stirring sugar into his coffee. "Feels like a lifetime ago," Jamal replied, "but also like yesterday." This had become their tradition. The annual Kindness Dinner at Rossi's, where the Morrison Foundation sponsored meals for 100 community members. No speeches, no cameras, just connection. That's when she approached their table. "Excuse me, are you Jamal Williams?" The young woman was maybe 17, with nervous energy and calloused hands that spoke of hard work. She wore a Francis Parker school sweatshirt, the same school where Keisha was now thriving. "I am." "What's your name?" "Isabella Rodriguez. I saw your story online. It inspired me to help my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Lane, when she couldn't afford her heart medication." Jamal and William exchanged glances. Another ripple. "I spent my college savings to buy her prescription." $237. It was everything I had. "What happened?" William asked gently. "She turned out to be a retired chemistry professor. She's been tutoring me for free ever since. I just got accepted to Northwestern with a full scholarship." Isabella reached into her backpack and pulled out a $20 bill. "I want to buy your dinner tonight, both of you. I know it's not much, but I want to pass it forward, like you did." Jamal's eyes filled with tears. He looked at the $20 bill, probably Isabella's lunch money for the week, and remembered counting his own last $12 in this exact spot 1 year ago. "We would be honored," he said, accepting the money. As Isabella walked away, beaming with pride, William shook his head in amazement. "The circle continues," he murmured. "It always does," Jamal replied. "Kindness is like compound interest. It keeps growing." Later that evening, as they prepared to leave, William pulled out a small wrapped box. "For you," he said, "a 1-year anniversary gift." Inside was a simple silver watch. Not expensive like William's Rolex, but elegant. Engraved on the back were the words, "Time spent on others is never wasted." Sarah Morrison. "She would have loved you, you know," William said quietly. "I wish I could have met her." You did, in a way. Every time you choose kindness over comfort, you're carrying on her legacy. As they walked out into the December night, warmer this year, but still crisp, Jamal fingered the business card he still carried in his wallet. Not William's card anymore, but Isabella's. She had joined the Morrison Foundation's Youth Advisory Board and was already designing programs for student-to-student mentorship. The kindness that started with $12 had become a movement. The last dollar fund was now national. The diner network had expanded to 43 cities. But most importantly, somewhere tonight, another person would choose to spend their last dollar on a stranger, and the circle would continue. The question isn't whether kindness pays off. The question is whether you're brave enough to find out. Right now, somewhere in your city, someone is sitting alone, counting their last few dollars. Someone else is one act of kindness away from having their entire life changed. And you? You might be the person who connects them. It doesn't take much. Jamal had $12. Isabella had $237. You might have 5. You might have 50. The amount doesn't matter. What matters is choosing to see the human being in front of you. So here's my challenge. This week, look around you differently. Notice the invisible people, the person struggling with groceries, the elderly neighbor who seems lonely, the student who can't afford lunch. Your $12 moment is waiting. Share a story of unexpected kindness you've witnessed in the comments below. Tag someone who restored your faith in humanity. And if this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Because the world needs more proof that ordinary people can create extraordinary change.